With so many recommendations for audio interfaces and why some should be used over others for neural amp modeler, I thought it would be helpful to do an A/B test of 3 USB interfaces I have at 3 different price points so that you can answer the question, does it even matter? As much as hardware interface companies try to sell you on the idea that their preamp is better than anyone else's on the market, 99.99% of the time, that isn't true. The basic requirement for an audio interface preamp is transparency. It's not like you're buying an analog hardware that has some coloration as its sonic identity, like the preamp and EQ section of an analog console. According to Bobby from Frightbox Recording, whom I follow, here's what he says about USB interfaces.
99.999% of audio interfaces are 100% transparent. In other words, they don't really have an inherent sound quality to them, or they don't color the sound in any specific way. Interfaces are clean. Audio interfaces do not affect your vocal, guitar, or bass, or any other tone for that matter. What you put in is what you get out.
I like to test this idea of transparency. To do so with my gear, I've recorded the same chords, riffs, and licks on 3 different devices at 3 very different price points. At the cheapest end of the spectrum, we have my iRig Pro interface, the simplest of the lot. In the middle, I have my old faithful Steinberg UR22, which has a high impedance input switch for guitars. At the top end, I decided to try my Line 6 Helix as an audio interface with zero effects block processing. As a guitar-centric device, I figured the Helix is an ideal candidate for this test. I've used the same guitar and cable for all 4 test case scenarios with the same pickup combinations processed by a single instance of Neural Amp Modeler. I've loaded up the TJ BC30 EF86 profile with a WT impulse response. I've duplicated this over 4 different tracks: the iRig on low gain, the iRig on medium gain, the UR22, and the Helix. First dry, then with some delay and reverb. The key is to listen out for any tonal differences and to account for those differences later. For best results, put on a good pair of headphones. That was interesting for me on several fronts. Let me load up a screenshot of the recording on Logic. You can clearly see that the guitar was tracked with different levels of input gain. Here's a big observation. Input gain is a critical factor in terms of how a profile reacts to your playing. It feels very different when a profile is running hotter with more gradation of gain between softer and louder notes and between the neck and bridge pickups. What was surprising to me was that the Helix has low input gain and I can't even change it. At least my iRig has the ability to crank up the gain if I so wanted to. I think running it hot sounds better. Running at lower gain sounded fine, but it felt less lively for lack of a better term. And that's not an indication of my preference for rock and metal tones. This is corroborated by other users who say that the best tone coming out of NAMM profiles is to find that sweet spot where you have as much input gain as possible without internal clipping. Then again, this is a Tone Junkie profile and HW is a sonic wizard in the world of capture and profiling tech. Maybe not all profiles are created equal. Before we carry on, are you finding value in this video? If you are, hit the like button as it lets me know that content like this is relevant for you and encourages me to make more just like this. If you're a worship musician on the same journey, consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon. That's an observation about gain. The main observation, however, is that when I compare the hotter samples with each other, namely the iRig at medium gain and the UR22, I couldn't tell a difference between the two. Same goes for the lower gain samples, namely the iRig at low gain and the Helix. It seems Bobby is right. Interfaces are meant to be transparent. The differences in tone arise from how hot the input gain is set and how that affects your playing from the resulting feel of the profile. Big question for you, do you find a tone with delay and reverb more inspiring to listen to? If so, your perception of what sounds good is compounded by your preference for ambience and has nothing to do with the interface. To really drive home the point that the interface doesn't matter, in this next example, I'm going to be playing the same parts of all three of my devices in the context of a mix with delay and reverb. As I've noted in the previous tone crafting video, delay and reverb aren't just tone enhancers in the sense of making your tone better. They inspire you to play better too. Every element in the signal chain either adds or subtracts from vibe, which is subjective to everyone's taste. But what most of us will objectively agree is that some ambience makes guitar playing feel better. So maybe the question isn't if the interface will make a difference to neural amp modeler. You have to take everything in your signal chain into context. The guitar, the gain staging, the effects used before and after the NAMM plugin. If you're not finding Neural Amp Modeler inspiring to play, consider the following. What profile do I have loaded up? As I've mentioned earlier, not all profiles are created equal. What's the gain staging like at your interface? Can you dial in more gain or cut out gain to vary the feel of the profile? What plugins do I have at my disposal to enhance the tone? Do I still feel the same after pulling up a nice delay and reverb sound? In sum, tweaking and finding the ideal tone is an iterative process. Don't immediately conclude that your old interface must be to blame for NAMM profiles not sounding as good as you want them to be. The key is to try and isolate, identify, and find a solution, hopefully without having to spend more cash. But that being said, let me know in the comments, what interface do you have for running Neural Amp Modeler? What does the rest of your signal chain look like, whether physical or digital? I'd love to hear your stories, ideas, and thoughts in the comment section below. If you're looking to implement Neural Amp Modeler in a live rig, I have a video that you can check out right here explaining how I use Ableton Live to automate different channels containing distinct signal chains with different NAMM profiles loaded, no external controllers needed. I'll see you there. Until next time, I'm Justin, and I'm all about worship guitar.